Up the mic again. Before I introduce our next panel, though, I would like to begin with a little bit of history. In 1874, the tribes of the Southern Plains had reached a point of crisis. The 1867 Treaty of Medicine Lodge had promised the Comanches, Kiowa, Cheyenne, and Arapaho the right to continued hunting south of the Red River. But an intentional campaign of slaughter was rapidly decimating the southern bison herds. Likewise, the reservation agency had failed to keep many of its promises, and many amongst these tribes had set out to defend their lands, their relatives, and their customary lifeways. A large group of Comanche families, along with allied Kiowas and Cheyennes, had set up their winter encampment along the Prairie Dog Town fork of the Red River in the Paladuro Canyon, where the 4th U.S. Cavalry under Colonel Ronald Mackenzie surprised them on September 28, 1874. Native men engaged the surprise attack while their families fled, but most of their belongings, their winter supplies, and their horses were left behind. Mackenzie burnt the camp and all its supplies while rounding up the horses and herding them to nearby Pool Canyon. There the killing began. Soldiers roped the frantic horses and led them to a firing squad, massacring them, and leaving such a stench that the troops had to relocate their base camp. More than 1,100 horses were killed, some number it as much as 1,400 or even more. This tragedy was deeply personal for the Comanches, for whom the horses were relatives and family members. It was a killing of kin, and a stunning interruption of the people's culture, history, and lives. The war of attrition that was the Red River Campaign ultimately ended the nomadic way of life on the Southern Plains. On September 9, 2007, representatives from Texas Tech University and the Comanche Nation met in Lawton, Oklahoma's Medicine Park for a ceremony of invitation. Among other things, the university used this occasion to recognize the indigenous lands and histories to which it is tied, and offer an open invitation to Comanche people to engage the university in relationships that would remember and acknowledge what had transpired. Ceramics played a crucial role in this ceremony. 4 pairs of representatives from the university and from Comanche Nation went to the 4 directions. Each held a ceramic pitcher made from the clay and bones of Pool Canyon and containing water from the Ogallala Aquifer that lies under our feet. As the drummers sang about the Battle of the Adobe Walls, the water was poured into 4 urns and from them back onto the ground. As I started research for this show and symposium, I had several people tell me about how meaningful the ceremony was. Coffey, I saw Karita is here. Karita mentioned it. Wallace, Coffey, you mentioned it in our conversations. The Comanche Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, Martina Lindorn, also independently brought it up in conversations. So it seemed important to me to remember the event and the commitments that our university made in initiating that ceremony. And it also seemed like a prime case study for exploring how the art and materiality of ceramics enmeshes relationships amongst us as diverse peoples and in our relationships to the earth. So today, in remembrance of this ceremony of invitation, I have invited 3 people who are participants in various different ways to recall their experiences and tell us more about the other folks who were involved in this and what the ceremony meant and what it continues to mean to you all. So I'm going to introduce our next panel. Wallace Coffey of Lawton, Oklahoma, was elected 6 times as chairman of the Comanche Nation, serving 25 years before retiring in 2012, the most of any elected Comanche leader. He earned his master's in education from Harvard University in 1978, and he went on to serve in numerous administration roles before entering tribal government. He's a published author on tribal and cultural sovereignty and has served as an MC for powwows across the U.S. for 55 years. Wallace was a representation of the Comanche Nation and one of the participants in this 2007 ceremony of invitation. Richard Rowland is Kanaka Maoli, or Native Hawaiian, a ceramic artist living in Astoria, Oregon. He was born in Hawaii, and Rowland earned his MFA with honors from the University of Tasmania and a BA with honors from Pacific University, and he has studied kiln design in ceramics in Australia and Japan. Community and the ways in which ceramic arts practices have the potential to draw people together are central to how Rowland has built his career. Constructing two large wood-fired anagama kilns near Astoria has allowed Rowland to bring together diverse groups of volunteers, caretakers, and artists around the labor of preparing and firing the kilns. Rowland's work has been exhibited at Pacific University, the Longhouse at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, the Patricia Razor Center for the Arts in Beaverton, Oregon, River Sea Gallery in Astoria, Oregon, the Kokiri Hutahi 7th Annual Indigenous Cultural Arts Gathering and Exhibition in Aotearoa, which is also known as New Zealand. His community building work and kilns have been featured in numerous publications, and Rowland has been recipient of the Oregon Governor's Arts Award for 2004 to 2005. Rowland was commissioned by Texas Tech to produce the ceramic vessels used for this 2007 ceremony of invitation. And finally, Andy Wilkinson is an American singer, singer-songwriter who writes cowboy poetry. He counts Charlie Goodnight among his relatives, and much of his work seeks to paint a picture of the early American West and local history here in West Texas. In 2014, Wilkinson was inducted into the West Texas Walk of Fame. He is now retired from Texas Tech's Southwest Collection, and Wilkinson assisted Rowland in securing play for the ceremony for the invitation project, and has been an invaluable resource to me in researching this history and this story. So thank you all for joining us this morning. Thank you. So Wallace, I think I would like to start with you. I told a little bit of the history here, but would you be willing to tell us a little bit more about what the Battle of Palo and the Red River War more generally meant for Comanche history and for the people today, and how is it remembered?
You know, Ben, I want to thank you for this agenda because it's very meaningful to me. I don't want to dwell on the Red River Wars very much because we don't have a lot of time. But that in itself has been very traumatic for us. And when we bring back these subjects, it brings back that intergenerational trauma that our people have experienced. And today it's going to bring back those feelings once again about things that we really don't discuss anymore. Red River Wars ended up with some of our tribal members, Navajo, Apache, Kiowa, Cheyenne, Arapaho, ended up in prison in Fort Marion in St. Augustine, Florida. And to me, the good side of that is that some of my artist friends back home said that was the beginning of traditional art because the Indians put their stick figures on the walls, on the wood. They did everything they can to find hope. But I want to concentrate on the jars, if you don't mind. I haven't touched those jars, and I won't touch those jars because they're sacred. If I was to put my hands around those jars, I could feel the spirit of those horses. And I don't want to go through that process again because I just mentioned intergenerational trauma. The topic of this art show in here is belonging. I have in I want my sister to come. These are Comanche women's tears. Whenever the horses were slaughtered, they heard gunfire. They heard the horses crying and whinnying. And when the news broke out to the women, they cried. Here, sis, put them in your hand and show them around, but don't drop them. That's all I have. These are Comanche women's tears. They're not pebble. They're not rock. So when the news hit the Comanche women and the people, go ahead, put them in your hand. Take them out, sis. And don't start crying. Yeah, just hold them. That'll be all right. Because you're a Comanche woman, you have every opportunity and right to show them. But look at them. Those are not pebbles. They're not rock. These are crystallized tears of Comanche women. When they cried, their teardrops crystallized and fell on the canyon floor. About 25 years ago, a man came to me. He said, I want you to hold on to these. And to me, I was just wondering, what's the reason? He said, I spent a lot of time in Paladuro Canyon. And he said, I went to the old campgrounds of our people. He said, you can still see remains that are very evident there at the Paladuro. He said, but I kept looking and I kept looking and I sat down and I prayed. All of a sudden I realized there are tears that are in the sand. So he said, I collected them. And I didn't know what to do with them. My life is going to be short, but I want you to take them, share them, show them around, because this is very historic. So when you look at something like this, Texas Tech, you created this show called Belonging. Comanche women shed tears because those horses were family. Those horses were our relatives, our kin. And it's just like killing, another part of yourself. And they couldn't believe it because horses were not the enemy. We were the enemy. But what was happening at that time was that the horses were trying to dodge the bullets. They were trying to put up a fight. And when they were trying to dodge the bullets, they were giving messages to the Comanches. We'll be all right. You go. Run. Leave. The Comanches escaped on the north rim of the Paladuro Canyon. They went over to Antelope Hills, which is where Woodward, Oklahoma, in that area is now. But what I wanted you to see here is you may not ever see that again. The tears of our women. Because them horses belong not to us, but with us. They were family. And we still consider them family today. I've had horses, I love horses, I ride horses. Me and Andy had an experience over there, and Andy can share that with you. I want to stop right there and share time with our guests.
Thank you. So maybe we could go to Andy next, and you could tell us a little bit about how this project came about from the Texas Tech side, as you were involved with that. But who else was involved, and how was it planned, and how did it come about?
Sure, but first I'd like to respond to Wallace's great description just on the idea of the horse, and point out that the horse is one of the most incredible creatures on the planet. It's worth noting that McKinsey had to threaten his soldiers with courts martial to make them kill the horses. They didn't, I mean, they felt the same thing, you know. And then to spend time in that very canyon with Wallace, with a film project about horses, about wild horses, was an incredible experience for me. And I was really lucky to get to do that. But this project, there are some really key people. The first and foremost is our late and dear friend Barry Lopez, whose archive we have here at the university, and through whose influence we have collected some 24 or more other writers on the natural world. And it's an incredible thing to use. I invite you, when you have a chance, to go dig into that some. But Mary has been very concerned not only with the land, but with indigenous people, their relationship with the land, how the two influence one another, and how we, in today's world, much like Chase was talking about earlier, we should be influenced by both. And so how do we go about that? And one of the things that he thought about, one of the first things he thought about when he came to Texas Tech, was that this is Comanche land. We should come up with some idea. We can't make a reparation, but we can make some degree of peace by recognizing that. And the very good thing is that we had a director at the time, Bill Tyler, and we had a president at the time, John Whitmore, who were in lockstep with this idea. And we had friends amongst the Comanche, not only Wallace, but Harry Lythwell, Nita Pattapony. These were people with whom we connected to determine how this would occur. And then through Barry, we got to know Richard. And so it was a wonderful community project spread out from Lawton to Astoria, Oregon, and all places in between. It took some time to put it together, and it's just an extraordinary thing to do. So to be there was really great.
So Richard, how did Texas Tech approach you with this project, and what interested you about it initially?
Well, I think I was approached by my colleague and writer, Barry Lopez. And the reason why he approached me is, I think, maybe one, I was a native person, maybe, I don't know. Two, I had worked with him on several projects, and he proved to be a man of integrity to me. You know, and I couldn't really turn him down, even though I didn't know enough about what I was getting into. I trusted my instinct, and I trusted kind of my calling. Many times you folks are going to be in the same situation where you have to kind of dive into the unknowable. And this was one of those situations where I had to do what in Hawaii they call kuleana. And the kuleana that each artist has, as many of you artists have talked about, is a responsibility to your communities. And hopefully you'll take them serious. You know, I know you do. But that's the greatest blessing that artists can have, in my humble opinion, is to have responsibilities to help the community or your own community. And Matthew Berry called me, I thought about it for at least a week. Because, oh my God. Because this is not my home. And I have to go into another person's home. And so hopefully Texas Tech did their own way. Contacted Wallace, contacted all the folks that would be involved. That's a big deal. Usually, you have to be introduced into an indigenous community to participate. But I think maybe there was so much faith and so much love in the Comanche nation that they were able to allow a stranger to come into their home. With that being said, real quick, I'd like to give Wallace a gift. If you can open it at any time, you don't have to open it today. And I'd like to give Cliff a gift for allowing me to come to your home. Also, I have gifts for many of you out there, but I didn't have enough room on the plane to bring that many.
Wow.
And I apologize for not doing anything right and coming into your place, maybe. But if I make a mistake, I have good people around me to help me.
Can I just say something about this connection of place?
Yeah. Yes.
I never asked Barry this question exactly, but from things he said, because Bill and I wanted to know about you.
Oh, okay.
And well, I mean, Barry,
Yeah.
first of all, Barry's someone you knew and trusted. But he also highlighted how Richard's work seems always to involve the community. And Harry Michael and I got to travel to Oregon to be a tiny part of the firing of these vessels. And one of the beautiful things was to watch how, from the moment Harry got off the plane and we got to the kill, that it was as if he had been there from the beginning. He became part of that community immediately, and they are part of his. And so I really didn't think about, until you just said it, about you not being in someone, I mean, you being in someone else's home. It just looked to me like, as an observer, that it was all the same home.
Oh, thank you. You can't do it overnight. And I think that in order to make a home, for generations it takes some time. Thousands of years it takes some time. To understand how you can help. And what is it about the place that you live in that requires your attention? I'm not interested in changing anything. I'm a lot more interested in letting everything change me and trying to pay attention and meet
Yes.
yeah. But I was invited. Thank goodness.
So, Andy and Richard, since you were both can you talk about what that process was like, both the collection, but also, Richard, what you did as far as like actually designing the pieces and admiring the, you know, the process of that, making the final piece?
You want me, you go ahead.
Well, I'll start by saying, first of all, if Barry Lopez, he's gone now, but if he called you up and asked you to do something, it was inevitable you do it. Yeah. You just couldn't, you could not do that. The other thing I want to say is that this guy is a taskmaster. Having to go around and collect the clay to take, that was hard work. When Harry and I went to pick wood, get pieces of wood to bring from here to Oregon, it was more like an Easter egg hunt. This was work to go through Tool Canyon in more ways than one. For one thing, we were there at the place. And luckily, although I'm not native, I knew my people are the people of the 60s, rock and roll, and we understand what vibes are all about. And when you go to a place like Tool Canyon, you feel it. And so in addition to these incredibly heavy bags of clay, and Richard never seemed to say, that's enough. There was always a little more to put in the bag. But the place was heavy.
So the reason why I went into the canyon is I had permission, and I also understood my kuleana to pray. The first thing I did before I went into the canyon was pray. And, you know, it was a little overwhelming for me to understand the consequences of what I do. But I had enough good people around me to have help guide me, like Andy and Mary. He had a grad student with him and Bill Tiedemann. And so I felt like I had to do my job. So I tried to remove myself from the situation, if you know what I mean, and try to be attentive to what my responsibility is. And so that's really what I got. And then Barry, before we started collecting, and Andy, we laid down tobacco again and prayed together. And so we went through a lot of silence, because the nature that I felt in the canyon was impossible for me to understand. But I felt it. And I think that what I realized, there was more here than I could see. The unseen, or the unknowable stuff, was more powerful than those things that I couldn't see. And so we didn't rush.
You know, Andy made a good comment because he mentioned that we were in Comanche land, and that was correct. Not too far from here is Blanco Canyon. There's a site there that has, I estimated 75 teepee rings at the bottom of this canyon. These teepee rings are dirt that was placed around the teepee so the snow and the wind would not come inside the teepee. They would be able to remain warm. But they're still evident and they're still there. That is the beginning of the Llano Estacado. as we know it today, the State Plains. And as you go farther north, you end up in the Paladuro Canyon. So those teepee rings represent a footprint of our Comanche ancestors and their home. And Andy, you were right, you know. I gotta tell you that Andy is a good friend. We met at Tool Canyon doing a documentary for the Nebraska Educational TV. Tell them what you told somebody the other day.
This is, it was an incredible experience. First of all, the people at NATV were just wonderful. They wanted to document the horse, the wild horse, and they were very interested in this whole story. And they asked me to find someone who could bring a horse down that would not look like a traditional quarter horse, you know, a contemporary horse. And I had a cowpunch friend up on the Canadian river lakes that had I think he was a brilliant, was he not? Wallace, a gray, an apple gray.
Great, yeah, and blue.
And he was a young horse. And my friend brought it down in a wagon, in a trailer, and unloaded him. And then my friend Rooster said, you know, I don't know if we ought to do this. This horse is just skittish. He's young. He's barely ring broke. And he said, I don't want to. And he said to me, away from the cameras, he said, I don't want to be responsible for killing the chief of the Comanche people. And I said, well, Wallace can make up his own mind. So Wallace walked over to this horse who was standing there, saddled, head on, everything, ready to go. And you could see that the horse was quivering all up and down his side and his head. He was, you know, if you know anything about horses, you can tell this horse was not happy about what was, where he was and what was going on. Wallace walked up, looked him in the eye, held his jaw, turned it around, and breathed into this in blue snow.
No.
You could, and I was there to watch the jitters and the ripples stopped there and smoothed all along the whole down to his tail. It was the most incredible thing. Wallace stepped up on him and rode him around like he was a John Deere tractor. And no trouble. And it was a beautiful thing to see. And I, of course, I was struck, you know, and I said, is this some special trick of the Comanche? And Wallace looked at me like I was, not like I was an idiot, but like he was feeling sorry. This is a good horseman's trick. And I was just so taken with how all that came together and how he showed several cowboys a good lesson.
When I got on that horse, we were gonna go up to the canyon to the spot where the horses were being slaughtered. I rode just a little ways, the horse was hesitant to go. So I came back to where the corral was. I didn't say anything, but I told Andy the other day that horse did not want to go because it had something that it, to me, showed emotion. And last night when I was in my room, I brought these tears out, and it made me cry. I got very emotional. And it's easy because history hasn't been that long ago. So we go all the way to Bible. We couldn't read it, but we knew it was there and it was coming and it was going to be imposed upon us. But one of the things that we did realize is Christianity and Comanche spirituality were very closely related. We prayed to that person on the other side of the sun, we call him Kanaka, our Father. In the non-Indian terms, it's called God. Kiowas, they call it Dog-E. Muskogee Cree people, they call it the Zata Zimizi. The Lakota people call him Tokashina. My late wife, member of the Oto Missouri tribe, they called him Wakanda. There was all different names that tribes had for the Great Spirit. And today, you know, me and my little sister, we were raised in a very strong Christian environment. But my sister grew up early and she became Comanche. I'm serious about that. Christianity didn't fulfill that void that was in her spirit. But when she became Comanche, she knew the traditions, she knew what the purpose was, and she went forward. Me, it came later. Probably when I was in high school, I started realizing, why am I so strong? My mom wanted me to be a minister or such. And you go to high school, you take this aptitude test, and you got a counselor telling you, you need to go into the clergy. Yeah, right. But that didn't happen. And I'm very grateful to be here because this is a historic event in my feeling and interpretation. And I know that there's other activities, and I want to give you a gift from Walmart. Yeah. And to my friend over there, I have a bolo tie. It's got the Comanche, just like this symbol. Yeah, there. You're younger than me, so I'll let you get. So I'm very grateful to be here today, and the exhibit was just very promising for the University of Texas Tech. And the reason I'm saying promising, out here in West Texas, this is not the first time I've been to Lubbock. And the last time I was here, we were talking about the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. To me, when that law was passed, it was not a political law, it was a cultural law. And I went 100% with it. Here in Texas, they have a Texas Historical Commission. Any item, funerary object, artifact, it has to go through the Texas Historical Commission before it's returned to the tribe. Or any remains. The Comanche tribe worked really hard to try to get Texas to understand. We have a cemetery, Comanche National Cemetery, near Killeen, Texas, Fort Hood. And right next to the cemetery, me and my relatives were there, and we went and we prayed, face east, put out tobacco. And when we got through, we turned to the west, and we found this medicine wheel there. Huge medicine wheel. I would say probably 50 feet in diameter. One of the largest medicine wheels in North America. So you're talking about footprints. We have a footprint all over Texas. All the way down to, Great Bend. down to, Chihuahua, Mexico, where we stole our horses. A friend of mine texted me this morning, we've got a dance coming up in May. I told him I'm at Texas Tech. Love him. He said, my alma mater. He said, make sure Will Rogers is still on his horse, his statue. And he said, that's probably the only horse that the Comanche didn't steal. And it made me smile because when you talk about belonging, the horse was treated like family. There are those of you that have a pet, a little dog or a little cat, and it would be devastating to you if that little pet or animal or whatever you may call it passes away. It would be devastating to you. So can you imagine how it was when we lost 1,400 head of horses? The soldiers that were ordered to slaughter the horses, they had tears in their eyes. They couldn't get a good aim. They fired randomly. They started at 5 o'clock in the morning. They didn't finish until what time? About 7?
Maybe as long as.
Probably 11 o'clock in the morning when they killed and slaughtered all the horses. And it was true that the soldiers had a very difficult task because they were ordered. And while they were shooting and killing the horses, they were crying because the horses were not the enemy. And it's really amazing how we have survived all these years and we're still here. And by having this exhibit and my sister on the lecture last night, we have another footprint in West Texas. And that's why I'm saying we were the original Red Raiders of West Texas. And I want to say thank you. Yeah, did you look at your Walmart bill? Now what Richard gave me is popo, Hawaiian word for navel, umbilical cord. Soft spot on top of newborn's head, the soft opening that connects an individual's spirit with their umbilical or ancestors. The repository was made and fired in Astoria, Oregon, in an anagama kiln, and I can't pronounce this word, from long ago, which was named by a delegation of Maori elders that came from in 2018. The pot was made by Richard Rowland and fired for 7 days using alder, Douglas fir, maple, and beaver chewed wood. Obsidian was used to represent the soft puka, the hole. If used, the inner lid can be sealed using wax and the outer lid can be lashed. This is amazing, and it's a good memory for me, Richard. Thank you. It will be forever cherished. And to my friend Andy, I give you a little token, but all I really have to offer is my friendship. So Andy, I think of you in that manner because the word friend in Comanche is heights. It is a high level amongst our people. We say, heights, hello. Hello, my friend, how you doing? That's how it is. When I saw you, sat by you at the dinner the other night, we rekindled that old relationship. And it can be done again and again. Good Lord willing, we'll meet together. And Richard, I have to say that our Comanche people don't know about the pots or the jars because I didn't know how to present it to them. I was not capable of giving the story to them on how it was made and what it should entail or what it should mean to us. But there will come a time that they will exhibit And I would like to say this, but I'm not chairman now. I cannot say I will take care of you, come to Comanche country. But maybe who's in that office at some time will look at it in a way that an expression needs to be undertaken. But in the meantime, I'm grateful to each and every one of you. You've heard a little bit of history. You saw the tears of our women. And just like losing your pet, your child, you would cry too. And I know that. And the women said it all. My sister and my niece, Margaret, they're probably the historians of our Comanche people because they remember and they know details. So I'm grateful, Clint. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy, Richard, Hope.
Thank you so much. I had questions planned about how do ceramics play a role in connecting people and establishing relationships and even thinking about reciprocity that I talked about last night. And I think we have gotten an object lesson today as much as a chance to talk about it. And so thank you, Richard, for your gift, and thank you, Wallace, for yours as well, and for sharing and talking about what that history means and how present it still is, and also thinking about what that day and that ceremony meant and its continued resonations and meaning today, and what the obligations that we carry today because of that ceremony. I think it might be a good time to take a break. We actually have some of Richard's prototypes and pieces that he was in the midst of making to design the pieces. We have two of the pictures that were actually part of the ceremony that are here in the Southwest collection. They're going to be available to view until 1 o'clock. I think the building closes at 1. But anybody who's interested and wants to see Richard's artwork and see how that came about, those are available to us to see this morning. Before we have a lunch break, this afternoon we will have events taking place out at the Art Annex. So that's a different location than here. It should be on the flyer. You can see the map of where it is. It's kind of out by the University Rec Center. That's where our kilns are. Chase is going to be doing a firing there this afternoon.
Right.
We have graduate students, we have artists who are bringing presentations of their work as well. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening this afternoon, starting around 2 out at the Art Annex. So with that, I think we'll take a break here, and those of you who want to gather can go